Hello, welcome to Faithless Love.
I often think betrayal never comes out of nowhere. It's born in the little things, the pauses, the words left hanging, the looks that slide away. You don't notice at first. At first you tell yourself, you're imagining things, you're tired, it's just a coincidence. But those small things add up, and then one day you see the picture they've been drawing, and your spine goes cold. Our house always smelled like coffee. In the mornings, strong, thick, with a bitter edge. In the evenings, softer, almost vanilla, like she was trying to sweeten the quiet between us. I'd gotten used to those scents the way you get used to the ticking of a clock or the creak of the floorboards. But one night another smell came into the air, sharp, unfamiliar, foreign. A man's scent. From that evening on I stopped sleeping soundly. I remember the day she came home late. Her cheeks were tired, her eyes had a spark I hadn't seen in a long time. I wanted to ask where she'd been, but the question got stuck in my throat. My gaze landed on her coat, and it smelled of cigarette smoke, a smell that had nothing to do with our home. Not our coffee, not our evenings. That night I lay next to her and listened to her breathing. Even in calm. My own heart pounded like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. I told myself it was paranoia. The longer I stayed silent, though, the clearer one thing became: silence is the worst ally. It wears you down from the inside, like water on stone. A few days later I started noticing more. Her phone face down. Messages she answered with a smile that wasn't for me. Fingers that trembled when I walked into the room unexpectedly. It all knitted together into a pattern, and every stitch hit me harder than a slap. One evening I did something I'd never thought I would. I checked the pocket of her coat. I felt like a thief in my own home. I found a receipt from a restaurant. The date matched the night she said she'd been held up at work. At the bottom were 2 glasses of wine. 2. One of them white, a dry white she hated. I sat on the edge of the bed with that scrap of paper in my hand. The paper smelled faintly of expensive wine and laughter that belonged to someone else, laughter I would never hear. In that moment something inside me broke. Not because I had proof, but because she had been living that secret beside me, smiling at me, drinking our morning coffee, and still slipping away to someone else. I didn't say a word. Not then. I folded the receipt back into the pocket and lay down. She slept as if her conscience were sleeping beside her. And for the first time I realized betrayal smells like more than another person's cologne. It smells like the cold that settles in your own home. From that night my investigation began. Not the kind with detectives, this was a soul's investigation. I had to know everything. Not for revenge. Because silence had become heavier than any truth. I realized something: the truth doesn't just walk in on its own. You have to rip it out, like a splinter buried deep in the skin. From that day, I began looking at our home differently. Every object, every little thing might hold traces of her second life. The first place I searched was her purse. Not right away, of course. I waited until she was in the shower. Then I unzipped it. Inside was the usual chaos: makeup bag, keys, loose change, a handful of receipts. Most of them were ordinary, from the grocery store down the street. But one stood out. A receipt from a flower shop. The date caught my eye. My memory told me instantly, that day, there hadn't been any flowers in our house. I was certain. I pictured her holding that bouquet. Not for herself, no. She never bought flowers for herself. Which meant she gave them to someone else. My temples throbbed with blood. That evening I tried to talk to her. "How was your day?" I asked. She smiled. "Too easily. Tiring. Lots of work. Want some tea?" Her voice was steady, but I could hear the false note beneath it. She'd always been a good actress. And me? I was just the audience, only now realizing the play was never about love. I started checking her phone whenever I had the chance. But the password had changed. She had never changed it before. And now, suddenly, she had. That tiny act told me more than 100 words ever could. Inside me, two men were fighting. One wanted to scream, to tear the truth out of her. The other stayed quiet, collecting every detail, every shred of proof. The second man won. A week later I found what changed everything. We rarely used the shared computer. But one day I noticed a browser tab left open, forgotten, unfinished. Plane tickets. 2 passengers. Departure in a month. Destination, a city we'd never been to. I sat in front of the screen for a long time, feeling the cold spread through my chest. She was planning to leave. Not just for an evening. Not just for a coffee. She was planning to fly away. With him. I snapped the laptop shut, as if I could close reality itself. But one thought kept echoing, what about me? That night I didn't sleep again. I listened to her breathing beside me, realizing it no longer belonged to me. Her body lay next to mine, but her soul was already packing its suitcase. And I told myself, you have to find out who he is. Not to take revenge. But to understand why I had become expendable in her life. So I began watching her. Not openly, of course. I noted the times she left, the times she came back. I memorized the perfume that lingered when she walked in. I caught the smell of smoke, though she never smoked. That smoke, tangled with her perfume, became the scent of betrayal itself. Each detail brought me closer to the truth. And closer to the abyss. Because the more I learned, the clearer it became, there was no way back. I always thought the worst part of being betrayed would be catching it red-handed. Turns out there's a deeper kind of pain, when the evidence drops into your lap all by itself. That evening she left in a hurry. Said she was meeting a friend and shut the door so fast it sounded like she was afraid of being late. A few minutes later I noticed her phone on the nightstand. The screen was flickering, lighting up the half-dark room. She'd forgotten it. I moved closer. A message preview flashed. No name saved, just a number. But I read the first line before the screen locked. Can't wait to see you again. A block of cold lodged in my gut. The screen hadn't locked yet. My heart hammered so hard my fingers shook when I picked up the phone. I opened the conversation. There was too much there to dismiss. Not crude confessions, not blunt lust, worse than that. Every message carried the warmth I hadn't felt from her in years. He asked how her day had been. He said he missed her. He talked about the future. And she answered with tenderness, with ease, with a smile that used to live in her voice but that I hadn't seen in person for a long time. I sat on the edge of the bed with the phone in my hands and felt like the person closest to me had betrayed me. But had I been the one betrayed? Time stretched painfully. I heard the lock click in the hallway. She was back, returning too quickly, as if she'd left something behind. My heart leapt into my throat. I managed to set the phone down, the screen went dark the same second. She came into the room and noticed the phone. She breathed out, relieved. God, she chuckled, I forgot it again. Good thing I didn't go far. She picked up the phone without even looking at me. In that instant I understood, her world no longer included me. I was only a random witness to her second life. That night I decided, I had to see them together. So there would be no doubt. So I couldn't talk myself into thinking it was all in my head. A few days later I followed her. I felt like a shadow. She walked fast, never looking back. I kept my distance, my heart pounding, a dull, painful drum. She went into a cafe. I stayed by the window. And then I saw him. A man in his 40s, dark hair, tall, with that confident look. He stood when she approached and touched her hand, a small motion, almost nothing. Yet that gesture held more intimacy than our last years had. She smiled at him, with that smile I hadn't seen in forever. I stood in the rain, cold water ran down my face, but it felt like tears. The emptiness in my chest grew, swallowing everything, like a black hole. Now I had proof. Now I knew. But with that knowing I'd lost everything and gained nothing. I sat in the dark kitchen while my coffee went cold. The thick, bitter smell reminded me I hadn't slept, not that I could remember how many nights in a row. Again and again the cafe replayed behind my eyes, her smile for another man. That smile that used to belong only to me. One question kept striking my skull: what now? Do I slam it all on the table? Put the phone in front of her and say, I know? And then what? Tears, excuses, lies wrapped in pretty words. Do I stay silent? Pretend nothing's wrong? Look away when she comes home late and keep believing her stuck at work stories? That would be a betrayal of myself. Or do I hit back? Find the man, look him in the eye and ask, why? But what would that get me? Would it bring her back? Would it bring back what we had? I listened to the old clock on the wall measure out my indecision. Each tick sounded like a verdict. The house smelled of absence, of her not being there, even when she slept in the next room. I felt it, between us there were no walls left, only ruins. I glanced at the ring of keys on the table. One opened the garage she hadn't used in ages. Another opened a door I could shut for good. In those small bits of metal sat my choice: stay or go. I stood and walked to the window. The city at night moved on, cars hissing through wet streets, a train howling somewhere far off. Inside me, only silence howled. Then it hit me: betrayal isn't merely cheating. It's stealing my life, my years, my trust. She smiled at me every day, looked me in the eye, and lived in another world. Sitting in the dark, something new grew inside me. Not pain. Not despair. A cold, clear decision. If she chose to play me, I would learn to play too. But by my rules. You can't erase betrayal. But you can take it back. And I already knew, one day she would feel what I feel now. A story of betrayal isn't only about hurt. Sometimes it breeds the urge for revenge. And then love becomes a weapon. Now I turn it to you: what would you do in my place? Walk away and leave her with her lies? Forgive, believing love will conquer? Or answer in kind so she understands the full depth of betrayal? Write your choice in the comments. Maybe your ending will shape what comes next, because every story is a choice. And every choice can change everything.